Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about statue vandalism. That's right, statues have been going down across the country and it's getting rather ridiculous and kind of sad. They're trying to delete America's history because, hey, why not? Liberals have destroyed everything else in this country. They've ruined our major cities, they've turned places into ghettos, they've robbed all these stores and set places on fire. They burnt down my Wendy's. Gosh darn it. They burnt down Wendy's and they canceled Taco Bell and they ruined movies and they got this Gone with the Wind movie taken off the internet. And now Forrest Gump is bad and Indiana Jones. It's like, when will the madness stop, people? When can we get my country back? Where's my country gone? But today we're talking about statues again because statues are still going down across the country. So basically, first step was tearing down any statue they could in public. They are not doing this in the formal, official way at all. No, not even close. These guys are very, very dangerous. They're going out and taking matters into their own hands, like how they've done with these demonstrations, the protests, the riots, all that stuff. They don't care about law and order. They hate the police, in fact, and they hate anyone that won't bow down to them. They want everyone to be these SJW zombies like them. You have to fall in line. You have to agree with everything they say. And that includes people in the past. That's right. That's why a lot of these statues were getting torn down initially. It was because there had these racial implications. They might have had a play in the Civil War or in slavery or something like that. They might have had to do with this or that. And that's why they're going back in time and kind of taking these characters down, even though some of these statues have been up for hundreds of years. And specifically today, we're talking about Theodore Roosevelt's statue. This is another American president who's losing his place in history. His statue will be removed from the Museum of Natural History in New York City. The memorial has long prompted objections as a symbol of colonialism. That's right. Colonialism is now under attack. It's not just specifically slavery. I guess that might have been part of it, but Teddy Roosevelt had this kind of known to be like a conqueror, like an explorer kind of mentality. Colonialism was about spreading and growing your country and getting land in different areas, making more states for America or whichever country it may be. Really, colonialism isn't really necessarily bad either. There certainly were bad things that happened in the past. Like we know about the slave trade. We know about things like, mistreatment of certain people, like there are bad disasters and stuff like that. They've all happened. But in the real world, in the kind of history of our country, like America was founded on colonialism. We started off as colonies of the British, and they built small settlements here on the east coast of America and eventually spread across the country. And then across the world, we have islands that we've kind of taken over or we've set free, this or that. There was one point the Philippines were under our control, at least a few bases there. We've had islands like Puerto Rico, other places expanded into the US. But basically, the problem is colonialism is bad because it's kind of considered racist and white people are involved and they hate American history. And it's just really hard to watch. It's a really tough place. And specifically, I want to have to mention this. This reminds me of Night at the Museum. Night at the Museum was actually based, I think, at this same museum. It's a movie. It's a Ben Stiller movie, really funny. And he basically becomes this museum guard. And at night, the museum comes alive. And one of the main characters was actually Teddy Roosevelt. I think it came from this same statue. And it also came, and it was acted out. Teddy Roosevelt was played by Robin Williams. That was one of his great later roles. Everyone loved those movies. And the reason I want to bring that up more is that wouldn't fly now. That's another thing. Like that movie wasn't that old. I believe it came out around 2005 or something, the first one. And they had three of them, I think. And they're all good. They're fun. They're family movies. It's not like the biggest, hardest kind of comedy. It's more for kids. But still, this wouldn't have happened today. We're talking about the same museum. Now they have to remove this statue, which was a big part of this museum. It's a big part of history. It's a big part of this New York City area. And it's just really sad to see that the way things have gone in current year, like you wouldn't have been able to make that movie. And now you can't even have a statue of one of our great presidents. Now for more details, let's see what the New York Times, the failing New York Times, has to say about this. It says, Roosevelt statue to be removed from Museum of Natural History. The equestrian memorial to Theodore Roosevelt has long prompted objections as a symbol of colonialism and racism. There's a picture of the statue. There's the cops and people driving by with masks. And let's get some more details before we talk anymore. The bronze statue of Theodore Roosevelt on horseback and flanked by a Native American man and an African man, which has presided over the entrance of the American Museum of Natural History in New York since 1940, is coming down. The decision, proposed by the museum and agreed to by New York City, which owns the building and property, came after years of objections from activists and at a time when the killing of George Floyd has initiated an urgent nationwide conversation about racism. Okay, that's a very interesting way to put it, New York Times, because I wouldn't call it a nationwide conversation about racism. I would call it straight up race baiting, causing race war, like a race riot in the streets. People are going nuts. They're tearing down stores, burning down their own cities, ripping down statues like they're kinds of, I don't know, they're like book burners. They're basically like World War II era book burners, or like something from Fahrenheit 51 or some kind of 1984 dystopian novel. This is not a good scene. It's not a nationwide conversation. Like, we don't even have major problems with racism. It's ridiculous. I mean, even this event, the George Floyd event, coming from Minneapolis, that arrest that went wrong, that no one's defending. And I'm not even trying to say anything about that, but the main point is there was no racism there. There was no proven racism. It just happened to be a black person that died. And anytime that happens, and anytime that's related to a white person possibly killing a black person, that's just automatically racism to these people. And then they want to try to act like it was like a nationwide civil conversation when really they're just riding in the streets and having this whole tribal warfare thing. For many, the equestrian statue at the museum's Central Park West entrance has come to symbolize a painful legacy of colonial expansion and racial discrimination. Over the past few weeks, our museum community has been profoundly moved by the ever-widening movement for racial justice that has emerged after the killing of George Floyd. The museum's president, Ellen V. Footer, said in an interview, "We have watched as the attention of the world and the country has increasingly turned to statues as powerful and hurtful symbols of systemic racism." Wow. Okay, so they're totally caving in. This lady is obviously either a hard leftist or definitely catering to them, because right now I'm seeing a lot of BS in this, okay? Racial justice is the first term. I'm like, what is racial justice? What does that even mean? Like, why are these people so focused on something like this? Statue's been up since the 1940s, and this president, it's been 100 years. Like, this happened 100 years ago. People, like, why are you so worried about these old events? Like, how come you're still dealing with the history, like something you learn in 8th grade history class? These people are still kind of struggling with it. It's ridiculous. And it's just like, it didn't happen to you. Like, this didn't happen to you. It didn't happen to your parents or maybe even your grandparents. Like, this is stuff that happened 100 years ago, 150 years ago. It's something you read in a history book, and now you're angry about it like a child. Like, you just had a book that you didn't like. It could be just like comparable to people that, I hate to say it, but people that complain about Star Wars or reading a book like, say, Gone with the Wind. If you compare that, like, those are not real stories. Those aren't based on all truthful things. But, it's just the same kind of thing to these people. They're just reading a book. It's not like it actually happened to them. History books are just stories too. And this is affecting them so much. They have to take down statues in the president. And it's really, really sad to watch. It's really, really lame. And also, the next term I want to debate in here is systemic racism. Like, just give me one example of a systemic racism. I'd love to hear it. If anyone has it in the comments, like, I've never seen it. I don't even know. This is just some kind of made up buzzword to me. Like, I don't see any system of racism in this country. There's no race-based laws or institutions. There's no like limitations. We had a black president. We've had people of all races be considered in all kinds of places. It's not a racist country we're living in. And that's just proven by how many people want to come here. I mean, if America was really racist, why does everyone want to immigrate here? Why do we have people sneaking in the borders every day? Why is it so bad here? Really, I don't see it. I just see people complaining and people just really kind of hating on white people. They just want to bash us and take down statues of our presidents and our country and our history. And it really needs to stop. Ms. Futter made clear that the museum's decision was based on the statue itself, namely its hierarchical composition, and not on Roosevelt, whom the museum continues to honor as a pioneering conservationist. Simply put, she added, the time has come to move it. The museum took action amid a heated national debate over the appropriateness of statues or monuments that first focused on Confederate symbols like Robert E. Lee and has now moved on to a wider arc of figures from Christopher Columbus to Winston Churchill. Yeah, basically all statues are bad now. I mean, Christopher Columbus is an Italian hero, like an Italian American hero. His statues went up to honor that demographic, and now they're getting taken down for bogus reasons, as is Winston Churchill. He was a great British leader who is offensive somehow in the present. And again, this reminds me just of the time travel aspect. Like they take these people that lived hundreds of years ago and they're using a present current day lens to watch at them. And it's just not fair. It's not fair to like condemn them for something like they didn't commit any crimes in the past. Like they were doing things by the book. They were exploring, they were fighting wars. They played within the system, within the rules and the time period that they lived in. It would be weird for them to have modern sensibilities in the past. I'm sure there might have been a few people like that, but it's just not the case. And the fact that they want to go back on this is just, it's just them being angry and not being able to deal with history class. It's basically, like I said in the previous tangent, they're just people that they had a history class and they couldn't handle it. They're like, oh, this was what happened in the past. Like, oh my God, we need to tear down statues now. And that's just not the kind of person we should be listening to as a country. If you can't handle like an eighth grade, a high school level world history class, and it makes you this angry, like you're not a stable person. You're not someone who should be leading and making decisions like this. Last week alone, a crowd set fire to a statue of George Washington in Portland, Oregon, before pulling it to the ground. Gunfire broke out during a protest in Albuquerque to demand the removal of a statue of Juan de Onate, the despotic conquistador of New Mexico, and New York City Council members demanded that a statue of Thomas Jefferson be removed from City Hall. So everything's under fire now. We've moved past like Civil War era stuff and more kind of stuff you might have a better argument for to kind of be removed. Like in my opinion, I don't think we need to remove any statues. Maybe there's some arguments for some actually racist people or some actually like people that treated people bad. Or you can move the statue somewhere else. I can understand that, like put it in the museum or somewhere different. But to just tear them down and take it into your own hands and to do it with every single statue, like every single major kind of like hero of America, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. I'm not sure about this Juan de Onate guy. De Oñate, I think is how you'd say it. But either way, these statues, it's just a silly thing to go after. And it's symbolic too. Like, it's just kind of like, yeah, we could say, oh, we should maybe just let it go. It's just a statue. Like, it's just a piece of metal or rock or whatever it may be. But that's just them. You give them an inch and they're going to take a mile. And as we've seen, they're not stopping. They're going for more and more statues. They're just going for it. And they know how symbolism and representation works. And they're taking advantage of that. And they're taking advantage of this death that happened in Minneapolis. That's another thing that people aren't really realizing. They're taking advantage of what happened in Minneapolis, that terrible tragedy. Someone died. And yeah, no one wanted that to happen. No one's defending that. But do you really have to spin it off into this race war? And now you're taking down statues of random people like a conquistador that was in New Mexico? It doesn't make any sense to me. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Comment your thoughts about all this statue vandalism below. And also make sure you hit the like button to get this video shared. Until next time, you have a great day.